Hello, and welcome back to MagmaStorm. Ancient Egypt has supplied us with some of the most fascinating items of antiquity. While archaeologists can usually explain the artifacts they've recovered, sometimes they are left without words when trying to interpret an unusual discovery. From a pit full of giant severed hands to an unexplainable diorite statue, here are 10 of the most unusual and unexplainable discoveries of ancient Egypt. Number 10. Giant statue of Ramses II. A few years back, a team of international archaeologists unearthed what would come to be known as 2 of the largest statues ever discovered. The gigantic works of art were discovered in a bustling neighborhood in the city of Cairo. This city was known in ancient times as the city of Heliopolis and was a prominent center for the worship of the sun god Ra. Upon first inspections, archaeologists working at the site suggested that the statues may depict pharaohs from Egypt's 19th dynasty. As the enormous statues were lifted out of the water by industrial-sized forklifts, curious bystanders couldn't help but watch on in awe. This unique find had been hailed as one of the most impressive discoveries to have ever been made in ancient Egypt. One of the statues stood at an impressive height of 8 meters, or around 26 feet, and was sculpted from a hard rock known as quartzite. Researchers think the statue depicts one of the most powerful and celebrated rulers of ancient Egypt, the pharaoh Ramses the Great. He was the third of the 19th dynasty of Egypt and ruled from 1279 to 1213 BCE. His successors called him the Great Ancestor. If correct, this would make the statue over 3,000 years old. The discovery of this statue fascinated archaeologists all across Egypt, for very few pieces on a scale as large as this have been recovered from the area. Another large limestone statue was also found nearby, which depicts the pharaoh, Seti II, a grandson of Ramses II. One impressive feature observed on the limestone statue of Seti was that the face was completely symmetrical, down to the smallest of degrees. This clearly showed the high level of craftsmanship that existed during this era of ancient Egypt. While you may have been amazed by the size of these enormous statues, our next unexplainable topic is not for the squeamish or faint of heart. Number 9. The Pit of Giant Severed Hands. One of the most unusual finds ever discovered in Egypt was unearthed back in 2011 at a site known as Avaris. This area was once a residential palace for the Hyksos, a people who were thought to be of Phoenician descent and considered foreigners by the ancient Egyptians. As archaeologists were digging in this area, they came across a strange and gruesome discovery. Within 4 pits, they recovered 16 human hands, all of which had been severed at the wrist. The researchers were shocked by the find and at the time had no real explanation for the discovery. Another odd aspect of the unusual discovery was the sheer size of the hands. Most were clearly larger than an average human hand, however, others abnormally large. This led many to consider the idea that giants may have once lived in ancient Egypt. After the initial findings, archaeologists spoke to Egyptologists about the discovery, and they had an idea of what the hands represented. The Egyptologists believed the hands were evidence of a physical practice depicted in scenes across Egyptian writing and art. In numerous depictions, a scene is shown where a soldier would present the cut-off right hand of an enemy in exchange for gold. Cutting off the right hand of the enemy was a practice undertaken by both the Hyksos and the Egyptians. One account is written on the tomb wall of Amos, son of Ibana, an Egyptian fighting in a campaign against the Hyksos. Written about 80 years after the initial burial of the 16 hands, the inscription reads in part, "Then I fought hand to hand. I brought away a hand. It was reported to the Royal Herald." For his efforts, the writer reveals he was given the Gold of Valor. However, this doesn't solve the initial mystery of why the hands were enormous. One theory suggests that the hands were actually that of the Hyksos, who were eventually driven from the area. These people trace their origin back to the Canaan, which was supposedly home to a race of giants known as the offspring of the Nephilim in ancient times. While this find was certainly the most gruesome on our list, our next unexplainable artifact helped scholars to better understand the unusual afterlife beliefs of the ancient Egyptians. Number 8. The Egyptian Book of the Dead. Saqqara is one of the most impressive sights in all of Egypt. This ancient necropolis was part of the Egyptian city of Memphis, the first capital of the United Kingdom of Upper and Lower Egypt. Throughout this area, elaborate tombs, precious artifacts, and a wealth of treasures have been discovered over the years. But one of the most impressive finds was a papyrus scroll that was recovered just a few years ago. The scroll was found alongside a cache of other items of interest, including sacrificed animals, beautifully painted coffins, and various unique statues. The scroll itself was discovered inside one of the recovered sarcophagi, and today researchers refer to it as the Wazari scroll. Upon closer inspection, it was revealed that the scroll was a staggering 52 feet in length and covered in exquisite drawings and hieroglyphs, mostly centered on the renowned Egyptian Book of the Dead. This book contains a collection of spells, hymns, and funerary incantations that were chanted to help the souls of the deceased find their way on the dangerous path to the afterlife. The artifact could date back as far as 1150 BCE and held a vast sway of knowledge that has been forgotten over time. As the scroll contains one of the most complete versions of the Book of the Dead ever discovered, it has helped researchers better understand ancient Egyptian religious practices and their beliefs on the afterlife. If you were intrigued by the revered Book of the Dead, you'll find the love Egyptians had for baboons as equally unusual and intriguing. Number 7. The Sacred Baboons. Ancient Egyptians had a special place in their heart for animals, and many of them were considered representations of their gods. Their reverence towards animals is shown by their extension of the sacred practice of mummification to include a wide range of animals, including crocodiles, cats, hawks, snakes, and dogs. One animal that was considered among the most sacred in ancient Egypt was the baboon, an animal that represented their great deity, Thoth. The baboon was not native to Egypt, thus it had to be imported from faraway lands by those who sought to keep this animal as a pet. A large number of mummified baboons have been discovered over the years in sacred places such as the Temple of Khons in Luxor. All throughout ancient Egyptian art, one can witness the reverence placed upon the baboon. Much of the artwork clearly shows the baboons engaging in human-like activities, including playing instruments, picking fruits, and even assisting authorities and police of the time. This has led scholars to suggest that the ancient Egyptians may have looked at baboons as humanoids in some regard. While scholars are still unsure as to where the baboons originated, ancient texts claim it was the land of Punt, which some have suggested lay close to the Red Sea. For whatever reason, the Egyptians considered the baboon one of the most sacred animals and were prepared to travel a vast distance to obtain them. If you were surprised by the reverence ancient Egyptians held towards baboons, you'll be equally shocked to learn about the ancient city found buried under the desert sands near the modern city of Luxor. Number 6. Egypt Golden Era City. The rediscovery of a 3,000-year-old city was deemed a miraculous find when it was first unearthed not far from Luxor in Egypt a few years ago. This ancient city is one of the largest to have ever been discovered, and upon further inspection, it greatly excited archaeologists as it was revealed to be the lost city of the rise of Aten. It's been theorized that the city dates back to the reign of King Amenhotep III, who ruled Egypt between 1391 and 1353 BCE. Initial inspections of the site revealed it was the largest and most industrial settlement of the area. As the excavation continued, archaeologists uncovered long streets flanked on both sides by houses, some of which had walls that were 10 feet high. In the city, archaeologists were able to identify 7 different neighborhoods, industrial areas, and an enormous communal bakery. The internal rooms of the homes were filled with all sorts of items that would have been used in the occupants' daily lives. This included pottery, cookware, casting molds, jewelry, meat pots, tools for weaving, and even glass-making utensils. One of the most impressive finds at the site were the statues and precious trinkets that once belonged to the famous Queen Tai, the wife of Amenhotep III. Those inspecting the area couldn't help but feel thousands of people just up and left at once, leaving everything behind. But why? The rulers of Akhenaten and Nefertiti are thought to have relocated their empire's capital to the city of Amarna within a year of some of the uncovered finds being built. Perhaps further excavations will reveal why. According to researchers and scholars, this site dates back to a period known as Egypt's Golden Age, a time known for its advancements in science, politics, and spiritual beliefs. Researchers believe that the discovery of this enormous city is the tip of the iceberg, and it's likely that over the next decade, there will be an enormous amount of precious artifacts discovered in the area. While the city of Aten was a shocking discovery for archaeologists, our next unexplainable artifact has perplexed researchers for over 150 years. Number 5. Khafre's diorite statue. At the world-renowned Cairo Museum in Egypt, hundreds of beautifully designed statues are on display. Over the years, various geologists and researchers have been left in awe as they admire the sophisticated level of craftsmanship that went into carving these statues from stone. One such example is a large diorite statue that supposedly portrays the pharaoh Khafre, who reigned during the 4th dynasty. When the stone was originally tested, researchers were amazed to find it was made out of the extremely hard diorite, yet they couldn't understand how the people of the era carved such a tough stone. Diorite is almost as hard as steel, and certainly couldn't have been carved with the primitive bronze tools that are often ascribed to the Egyptians. This has left archaeologists baffled when they try to explain how the ancient Egyptians could have carved the statue without modern tools. While some suggest abrasive techniques and stone tools were employed in its construction, the precise finish of the statue almost certainly rules out these primitive methods. The diorite statue was found alongside several other hard stone artifacts and cast a shadow of doubt upon the mainstream narrative of the primitive tools of the Egyptians. These finds discovered all over Egypt raise the question of just how technologically advanced the Egyptians were. Their level of craftsmanship on extremely tough stones has perplexed many modern researchers, as we today can only match the techniques employed with the use of diamond tips and laser cutting technology, otherwise known as CNC. As the years go on, it's becoming increasingly apparent that the ancient Egyptians had some form of advanced technology that allowed them to precisely cut some of the hardest stones on the planet, such as diorite, quartzite, and granite. While the diorite statue has remained a relatively unexplainable item for over a century, our next item could shed light on ancient European connections to dynastic Egypt. Number 4. Egyptian mummy wrapped in Etruscan writing. During the 19th century, an archaeological museum in Zagreb, Croatia, got its hands on a mysterious Egyptian mummy. Upon closer inspection, the archaeologists realized that the mummy was wrapped in a non-traditional style, suggesting that she was not of a royal lineage. The woman was wrapped in a vast amount of linen that was covered in an unusual and cryptic form of writing, unlike anything else found in ancient Egypt. At first, researchers thought that they were dealing with some kind of arcane form of Egyptian writing, but after a while, it was clear that no such language existed in ancient Egypt. Once researchers realized that they were dealing with a foreign language, it didn't take long before one scholar identified the writing as Etruscan. These enigmatic and ancient people once lived in modern Italy, yet very little of their writing and literature has survived through to the present day. The home of the Etruscans was situated between the Tiber and Arno rivers at a place known as Etruria. While little is known about the Etruscan, scholars claim that they were one of the first great civilizations that arose on the shores of the Mediterranean. The culture is credited with using some of Europe's first civilized cities, and it's even thought these people's achievements paved the way for the later Roman Empire. Could this ancient mummy prove that there was an ancient connection between the Egyptians and Etruscans? Could the mysterious Etruscans have their roots in ancient Egypt? Only further investigations will shed more light on the subject. While the Etruscan mummy is certainly an exciting find, our next topic gives us insight into the largest collection of mummies ever discovered. Number 3. The 1 million mummies. A large cemetery was discovered by archaeologists back in 2017 in the Fayum region of Egypt, about 60 miles south of Cairo. While there are many cemeteries scattered across Egypt, what makes this one special is that the researchers have suggested there could be as many as 1 million mummies in the area. Archaeologists have already excavated more than 1,700 mummies preserved by the dry desert. But those leading the work believe there could be significantly more buried in shafts cut into the limestone rock that is at times up to 75 feet deep. As the excavations continue, it is becoming increasingly apparent that the site may be some kind of mass gravesite. used during the Roman-Byzantine occupation of Egypt that lasted from the 1st to 7th centuries. Historians are at a loss for words when explaining why so many mummies were buried in the area. While some suggest it was used as a burial ground for the common folk, no major settlement has been recorded in the area. Another strange discovery was that the mummies were placed into groups depending on their hair color, and an unusually high amount of blonde and red-haired mummies was discovered. Amongst the fair-haired mummies, a male that once stood over 7 feet tall was unearthed with red hair. This led to the speculation of giants once living in the area. However, others have simply suggested that it shows an influx of Europeans into the region during the era of Roman occupation. Nonetheless, researchers hope that this find will eventually shed light on what life was like for these people during a seemingly tumultuous period. While this large collection of mummies has certainly shocked archaeologists, no researcher could believe what was found within the Great Pyramid just a few years ago. Number 2. The hidden chamber within the Great Pyramid. The Great Pyramid of Giza is one of the world's oldest and most magnificent sites. This enormous structure towers over the desert at a height of 481 feet. To this day, archaeologists are still undecided about its original purpose, considering no mummy was ever discovered within its internal chambers. There are an infinite amount of mysteries surrounding this great structure. While we may never know how millions of blocks weighing over 2 tons were cut and placed in an organized fashion, we are beginning to learn more about its mysterious internal chambers. One recent discovery shed light on a previously unknown corridor measuring around 30 feet in length. A press release revealed that the corridor is found on the north face of the enormous structure, behind huge limestone beams weighing tens of tons each. This was the first discovery of its kind in nearly 2 centuries. Researchers have speculated that these enormous sandstone beams at the end of the corridors may in fact be the original entrance of the Great Pyramid. If the researchers working on this find come to prove that this was, in fact, the original entrance to the Great Pyramid, it would no doubt be one of the greatest discoveries in the history of Egyptian archaeology. While this find will certainly go down as one of the greatest of the era, our next topic is an unusual and inexplicable burial that was discovered at the ancient necropolis of Saqqara. Number 1. The Golden Man. Archaeologists have made yet another unusual and exciting discovery in the bountiful tombs of ancient Saqqara. Last year, it was announced by archaeologists that they discovered the eerie remains of a mummified man deep within the site. The man was buried inside a sealed stone sarcophagus that sat at the bottom of a narrow 33-foot-long shaft. Alongside the burial, valuable jewelry was discovered, and the male was wrapped in several layers of gold leaf. After carbon dating was completed, it was revealed that the man was laid to rest over 4,000 years ago. This made him the oldest complete mummy covered with gold to ever be discovered. On top of this, it was revealed he was the oldest ever discovered non-royal mummified person. Archaeologists were unsure what to make of the burial, nor why he was buried in such a secluded corridor wrapped in gold. The mummy also wore a band on his head, a fashionable bracelet on his chest, and was dressed in an elaborate tunic, hinting that he may have been a man of high importance during the era. After further excavations in the surrounding area, many more artifacts were recovered. These included beautiful wall paintings, pottery, statues, and various amulets. These items, including the Golden Mummy, shed insight into what life was like during the 6th dynasty of the Old Kingdom. It provides a rare glimpse into the art, customs, religious traditions, and burial practices during one of Egypt's most fascinating eras. That is our video on 10 of the most recent, unusual, and unexplainable discoveries in ancient Egypt. If you'd like to see more videos on topics such as this one, subscribe to Magma Storm.